Hey guys, welcome into my next team preview video. I am going to be doing the Chicago Bears. We are now into the playoff teams, so we are inching our way to all 32 teams covered in my preview video series. I want to get these wrapped up sooner than later, hoping to get them done in the next week or so. I know some fancy football drafts around the corner. Then, of course, the regular season is going to be starting here in the coming weeks. Well, not coming weeks. We still got roughly underneath a month, but I cannot wait to kick off the NFL season and get back to some real football Sundays. But yeah, what you can expect in this preview video, just in case this is your first one you're watching, I'm going to share my feelings on Matt Nagy, the head coach. I'm going to take a look at the remaining cap space for Chicago and see if they can make maybe any additions prior to the season. And then I do look over their notable players that have been on the team for the last couple years that are entering a contract year, and then an offense and a defensive preview, my full feelings on their team as a whole. And then when I do go over the offense, I give it a fantasy football perspective, just to share my feelings if there's any guys I'm trying to target or avoid this year in fantasy football. So yeah, that's what you can expect. Let's go ahead and get this episode going. Matt Nagy is entering his fourth year as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. He's been to the playoff twice. His first year, he actually took them to the playoffs, and he won Coach of the Year. Then the second year, obviously, was a letdown. That actually had some people questioning for his job. Even last year, throughout the season, there was kind of like rumors, talking if they don't make the playoffs, would he get fired? They did end up squeezing in as a wild card, and they lost to the Saints that wild card weekend, and now he's entering his fourth year. He's got a chance to build his offense around a new quarterback that they drafted, Justin Fields. And I mean, despite them making the playoffs last year, it does definitely seem there's still that talk around him if he's going to be the head coach of the Bears of the future. And same thing for their GM, Ryan Pace. It kind of feels like this is definitely another playoff or bust year for this group. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing develops. But at the end of the day, I mean, he got his team to the playoffs 2 out of his 3 years. So you got to give him some credit there, because it is hard to win in this league, especially when you're in that division with the Packers, who are consistently good every year, especially with Aaron Rodgers. So jury for me too is still kind of out on him. I want to see what team he can have now with Justin Fields. Obviously, it depends on if or how soon we are going to see him, which I hope is by week 1. Let's just keep it moving then. As far as cap space, the Bears have the 5th least remaining cap space right now, so they don't have much to work with. They're sitting around $6 million. They could definitely make some additions off the market, maybe some cheap guys on a cheap contract from other teams if they wanted to make some trades. Guys are entering a contract year. Allen Robinson, he's playing on the franchise tag. They did not work out a deal with him before the deadline, so he will be playing that out this year. Now, Akeem Hicks is one of their great defensive linemen, and he has actually recently not requested a trade, but he wants to get a contract extension. He wants to finish his his career in Chicago. So it'll be interesting to see if they can work that out. I definitely think they should, because not only because of his talent, but I think it would be good for that culture in Chicago to see some guys getting paid around there, like not only Hicks, but they should have already worked out something with Robinson. So maybe they can at least get that done with him. But if they are unable to get a deal done prior to the season, and if this team's not in contention for the playoffs closer to that trade deadline, Hicks is a name to watch this year, to maybe for a contending playoff team to acquire from Chicago if they don't find themselves in the mix as we get towards the middle part of the year. Definitely don't expect a contract extension for Jimmy Graham. Not only he's older, but they did draft Cole Kmet in the 2nd round last year. And Bilal Nichols has been a solid defensive lineman for them, but he's definitely somebody that you want to see a full 17-game stretch of dominance if you're going to give any type of money to. And I do believe he was kind of banged up last year, so definitely outside of Hicks, there won't be probably any extensions getting announced by Chicago prior to the season. But yeah, let's just keep this moving then. I'm gonna start with the offensive preview. What you're seeing is the projected starters from Roy Countryman, one of my good friends in the business. You can follow Roy on Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy. These are pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia, which will be coming out here in the coming week or so. And for those that don't know, for you to, basically, if you see any stars on these projected starters or over on the notable backups, if you see a star next to the name, that means they made Chicago's top 22 player list. And in order to make that list, you have to be from the last 3 NFL draft classes, and you have to have less than 12 career regular season starts. There are some other unique qualifiers if they're from like the CFL or other leagues as well too. So, but yeah, if you see a star next to their name, they could be anywhere. We think of them anywhere between like a future all-pro in the league to a core special teamer in the league. So you get a number of reports. So I hope when that comes out, you guys do go check that out. But let's take a look at this offense, starting with the quarterback position. Obviously, that is the most debated position right now in Chicago. They did sign Andy Dalton. They made all these announcements like he was QB1. Then they drafted Justin Fields. And coming from me, I was like, all right, well, this is Justin Fields' job. They've kind of been trying to hold strong on Andy Dalton being the starter. Justin Fields came out and impressed this past weekend during his first performance as a Bear. So there's even more fuel to the fire that Justin Fields should be the starter. And I do end up believing Justin Fields will be the starter this year. Most odds say when you're a top 15 draft pick at the quarterback position, you're going to get a lot of starts as a rookie. And not only that, but he already brings, I don't see what the benefit is to start Andy Dalton. We all know what Andy Dalton is. He's a good, solid quarterback, but you got an ascending player in Justin Fields who you spent the first round pick in. So probably want to play him. Really quick though on Andy Dalton, he did pop up on my stats I collect from the last 3 seasons. He actually surprisingly is tied for the 5th most game-winning drive since 2018. He's got 7 of them, but that's not enough. Justin Fields is going to add a whole nother element to this offense. Not only with his passing ability, but he's got some legs that we saw him scoop for a touchdown in his preseason game. And he's coming from a big program, so he's used to being the face of a franchise when you come from Ohio State. I was so impressed with him in that game against Clemson last year when he hurt his ribs, came back in and just lit that Clemson secondary up. I still remember him even hurt running down the sideline to get a block for Trey Sermon to make it a big explosive play. So I think this guy's a leader. I think he's got talent, and they got something special there in Chicago, and I don't know what you're going to wait for. I think you need to get him out on that field and get as much experience as you can. And if Matt Nagy's truly coaching for his job, I don't know how you could start the season with Andy Dalton. I'm just being quite honest. I think Justin Fields should be the opening day starter. And in terms of fantasy, if Andy Dalton is the opening day starter, no, I'm not touching Andy Dalton in fantasy football. And now if it's Justin Fields is definitely a guy you can draft. I think I've talked this up in other videos. Maybe if for whatever reason the Bears don't announce him as the opening day starter, you may want to go draft a Matt Ryan, maybe a Kirk Cousins or a Ryan Fitzpatrick to be a placeholder until Justin Fields takes control of the offense. Now once he's on there, you gotta have low expectations at the beginning of the year. He's probably more of a QB2, but if he is very comfortable in this offense, and this offense is running on full cylinders, you got a borderline quarterback 1 that has a high floor because of his rushing ability, and then he's got good wide receivers, and he's got a good wide receiver in Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney splashed some really good things last year. Marquise Goodwin's a speedster that can blow by coverage, so he can be a potential shot maker for Justin Fields. And then Jimmy Graham's up there in age, but he's still solid at what he does, and Cole Kmet's a potential rising tight end in the league. So I'm excited to see what Justin Fields can bring whenever he does get that chance. But yeah, let's just keep it moving. Obviously you guys know I'm high on Justin Fields. He was my quarterback too. I thought he was the 2nd best quarterback in this class. I had Lawrence, then Fields, and then Trey Lance, and then Zach Wilson, and then Mac Jones is my top 5. But yeah, and then keep it moving to the running back position. David Montgomery, he actually finished his year really strong last year after there were some doubts after his really down rookie year. He had a really slow start last year, then he really came onto the scene for the Bears. He's one of the Bears' best players last year. One of the key reasons why they were able to climb back in that playoff picture and make the postseason. And he's looking to continue that this year. He's actually on a nice little streak right now. He's tied for the 3rd longest active streak with at least 50 rushing yards in a game. He's got 6 games in a row with that. And he's more than likely going to be the lead back now that he's proven that himself. But with that being said, he's still got some quality backs behind him in the backfield. Now, Damian Williams is a name you may have forgotten about or may have not heard of in a long time. For those that forget, he was number 26 on the Chiefs that year they won the Super Bowl. He had a really good performance in that championship game, and then he opted out last year, and then he was released from the Chiefs this offseason, and Chicago did add him. So he's proven success on the field. I don't view him much for anything for fantasy this year, but if David Montgomery has to miss any time, he's going to be the guy that's more likely going to lead the touches out of the backfield for Chicago. So that's something to keep an eye on throughout the season. And then Tariq Cohen's always been a really great receiving back for them. Now, he's always been a nice little PPR guy that you can play during good matchups, but keep in mind, it sounds like he's kind of having a slower return from his, I think he tore his ACL last year, so he's not returning as fast as they probably would hope. But taking a look at Tariq Cohen's impact in the passing game for Chicago since 2018, these are among running backs only. He's got the 4th most receiving yards per game. He's got the 5th most receiving touchdowns, the 6th most receptions, and the 6th most receiving yards since 2018. So he's highly productive in that role. He's got his specific role in the offense. So whenever he does come back, that also could be a big factor as far as David Montgomery in fantasy and his receiving ability and how much of his role will be decreased when Cohen returns to the lineup, because they did give him a contract extension last year. Money talks in this league, so more than likely when Cohen comes back, he's going to make an impact on David Montgomery's touches. But I think all 3 of them could be a nice little, it's not something you want to hear in fantasy, but all 3 of them could form a nice little running back by committee at the end of the day for Chicago. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then moving on to their wide receivers, obviously Allen Robinson has been one of the better wide receivers over the past 3 years, despite the poor quarterback play that he's dealt with in Jacksonville and in Chicago. He's actually got the 8th most receiving yards over the last 3 years with 255. He's a wide receiver 1 because of the amount of targets he's going to see. He's going to consistently see those targets. He offers that big body presence. And the good thing with Allen Robinson in terms of fantasy this year, I think, is there's reports that him and Andy Dalton has developed chemistry and they have been working well with each other. So I think he's going to bring that high floor with him as a player this year. And then I think if Justin Fields gets the job, that offers him even a higher ceiling as a player in fantasy football. So he's a guy that can be a wide receiver 1 no matter who the quarterback is. And then you're like, can you please put Fields in there? Because I think he can take his game to the next level with that young guy. I mentioned Darnell Mooney showed some good things. He's a guy, in fantasy, you can add on your bench and then see how his role plays out, see if he's going to continue his development into year 2. And if he is, maybe he works his way into a wide receiver 3, or maybe he's just a solid bench guy that you could put in during bye weeks or if injuries pop up throughout the season. Like I mentioned, Marquise Goodwin's got that track speed that can open up things for the offense if he can still be that player. And then they also got they brought in Damian Bird, who can be a field stretcher. I'm interested to see how Daz Newsome shows up. And then Riley Ridley's a name to watch for me anyways. I was a fan of his game at Georgia, and he is entering year 3, so maybe he's finally got the game down where he can make an impact on this offense. But overall, it's a decent wide receiver group. I think Allen Robinson definitely raises that group up, and then you're just kind of hoping Mooney can take that next step, and then either Goodwin or one of the other younger wide receivers can step up their play this year. And then their tight ends, they got Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, despite being older, I know a lot of people hate on him, but he's still been productive. Jimmy Graham since 2018 has these are among tight ends only, of course. He's got the 7th most touchdowns with 13. He's got the 9th most receptions at 143. And he's got the 9th most receiving yards at 1,539. So he's just a big body, touchdown dependent tight end in fantasy. I don't expect much out of him. And then you got Cole Kmet, their rookie, who showed some good things throughout the last year too. So I think he's going to work in on the lineup. And who knows, we may see more of 2 tight end sets with Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham, and then Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney out at wide receivers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing more of that, and we're going to see the 2 of them work off each other. I don't think any of them are worth a gamble taking a chance on in fantasy. There's a lot more other tight ends I would prefer. over. But it'll be interesting to see how they are both utilized in that offense. And especially, I mean, in terms of fantasy, do pay attention to Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham, because, it's the old tale where a rookie quarterback's best friend in the passing attack can sometimes be those tight ends. So that is something to notice. I mean, like I said, Jimmy Graham has been in the top 10 in terms of categories as from production over the last 3 years. But I think Cole Kmet would be the name to watch as a potential sleeper tight end. Maybe you can pick him up throughout the season. Now, where my concerns come from this offense is their offensive line. And obviously, if Andy Dalton, outside of if it's going to be Andy Dalton, because if it's Andy Dalton, it's not sexy to me, and I wonder how consistent this offense will be. Even if it won't be consistent underneath Justin Fields, at least I think he offers something more exciting, more juice, more explosive playmaking ability if he's at the quarterback position. Of course, he's going to go through his growing pains and probably make mistakes throughout the year. But my biggest concern, though, is the offensive line. They did draft Tevin Jenkins to be their left tackle. Now, the biggest concern is it sounds like he's about 2 weeks in a row without taking a practice in. So if he's unable to return and be healthy for week 1, they just signed Jason Peters off the market. I'm not sure if that's their plan in case he's not ready for week 1. Now, Jason Peters is, a legend at the position of his right, but at the end of the day, he's a lot older. I think he's been playing. Yeah, that's right. He's been playing guard for the last. I know he played guard for the previous season, and I'm not sure if he was at guard or tackle, because that whole Philadelphia's line situation was a mess last year. He might have been playing all over. But yeah, anyways, he's up there in age, so he's not the player he was. I mean, Cody Whitehair is solid. And then Sam Mustipher, you got to see if he can take the next step. He's still a young guy that's still gaining that NFL experience. James Daniels is a guy I really like. And then Ifedi, I know he's on the PUP. That came out wrong. The PUP list right now. So we're going to see if he's going to be ready for week 1, too. And he's an all right tackle. So it's not the best offensive line. You would hope that they can maybe get to average at best. To me, right now it's a below average group, and you're asking for a lot out of them. So I mean, that's my thing, is Andy Dalton's more of a stature quarterback. So if he's behind this offensive line, I don't like his mobility to stretch out plays and keep drives alive. That's why I think you got to go with Justin Field. Justin Field can make up for the poor offensive line in front of him. So yeah, I think that's what this offense is going to come down to, is who's the quarterback to start the season, and how long does he, if it's Andy Dalton, how long does he get his leash, and if it's Justin Fields, how fast can his play from college translate to the next level when it's real regular season live bullets going on. So it's something to keep your eye on. And as far as a unit, I mean, it's even with Justin in there, I kind of view it more of a top 15 to 20 offense, and then maybe if he does hit on strong his rookie year and it can elevate the play of others, maybe they can work their way up inside the top 15 in terms of offenses. Now, moving on to their defense, again, these are the projected starters from my man Roy Countryman. Please give Roy a follow at Preacher Boy Roy on Twitter, and let's take a look and break down their defense really quick. So obviously the Chicago Bears have been known for their defense for pretty much ever. It's always been basically those 2 years that they have made the playoffs. I mean, I know Mitchell Trubisky came on that 1 year when they made the playoffs, but it was their defense that really carried them most of the way, and their defense basically carried them last year too. Throughout the season. So their defensive front is pretty good. I already talked about Akeem Hicks. He's an all-pro type of talent, and you just want to see a full, healthy season out of him. I know he's kind of been dealing with some things over the last couple of years. Eddie Goldman is solid. Bilal Nichols, like I mentioned earlier, is solid. And those guys can all take up space and eat up things in the middle for the guys coming off the edge. So just a very solid interior defensive front for Chicago. And then Khalil Mack is obviously the star of this group. And Khalil Mack, taking a look at him since 2018, he's definitely been one of the more disruptive players in the game. Since 2018, he's actually got the second most forced fumbles, and he's got the 9th most sacks since 2018. So he's still wreaking havoc. He's still a problem for offensive coordinators to deal with, and you better plan on double teaming him on third down situations if you want to keep the drive alive. So, he's a defensive player of the year candidate on any given year. just because of the level of talent the dude has. Now, Robert Quinn was definitely a disappointment for Chicago coming off the edge last year. You want to see maybe some more consistent play, but he is definitely getting up there in age. So if he's unable to deliver at all, then you definitely have some concerns where they can shift the protection more towards Mac's way. You need that consistent pressure opposite of him, so maybe he can potentially get those one-on-one opportunities. And then taking a look at their inside linebacker group, it's very solid. Now, Danny Trevathan is up there in age. He's dealt with injuries too, so you wonder if his play speed is maybe dropped entering this year, but he definitely has a guy that can make up for it right next to him in Rokon Smith. Rokon Smith is coming off his best year as a pro since he got drafted to Chicago. Since 2018, he's actually tied for the 7th most solo tackles at 253. This is a guy that can fly over the field. He's pretty solid in coverage. He was my linebacker 1 for me in his draft class, and he's the leader of this defense with Khalil Mack. So I expect him to have a strong year for Chicago, and he's definitely going to get his contract extension in the coming year or so. He's a guy where, as long as those guys up front can stay healthy for Chicago, he can definitely put together a potential defensive player of the year with the numbers that he could put up in that Chicago defense. Now, moving on to the secondary, they got some guys there, but there is a concern for me in the secondary. So Jalen Johnson had a very good rookie season. He can be a playmaker in this league. So I think they got or at least their cornerback 1 of the future. I just have my concerns throughout the rest of that cornerback room. Duke Shelley's, he's decent. And he's still gaining meaningful NFL experience. Roy's got Trey Robertson projected as the starter opposite of Jalen Johnson, and he's kind of coming on from, I believe, the CFL. So we'll have to even see if he can deliver. I know they got, I didn't list them in notable backups, but they got a guy from, he was in Atlanta and Detroit, but we'll see if he can even make the team. Sorry, I did forget his name, kind of went blank there. But one guy I do like is Kendall Veldor. I like his ability to attack the ball in the air for interceptions. I thought he showed some things in college. He had some decent things since he's been drafted to the team. And I think he could maybe take that next step and compete for that nickel spot as well. But overall, it's an all right group. Deshaun Gibson's is a solid safety. And then Eddie Jackson, of course, it can be a turnover machine. I know he's dealt with his injuries as well. So you just want to see him on field. You like Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson's playmaking ability, and then outside that, you're like, okay, can these guys take the next step? Because if they don't, it's an all right secondary. So, but their benefit is they got a really good defensive front that can create pressure on the quarterbacks. So they don't have to be perfect back there. They just need to be able to get the job done and be able to react to balls, because they're more likely to be getting the quick passes on them, so they can avoid Khalil Mack getting that pressure. Overall, though, my biggest concern, though, with Chicago's defense is their depth. If guys start to get hurt, that's when this defense kind of starts falling apart. And we've seen that. There's been moments of that with the Bears throughout the last couple of years, especially when a guy like Akeem Hicks is out of lineup. It's very noticeable. Teams sort of immediately start to be able to run the ball against them. I think that showed last year in that Bucks matchup too, if I remember that right. If that's the game he got hurt. But yeah, so I don't like their depth in the interior of the group. I don't really like the guys they can work in the rotation to create pressure if Robert Quinn's not the answer. And I don't really think they got much in their secondary that they can work in if anybody were to miss time, like a Jalen Johnson. So if this defense starts to get hurt, I think that's where you're going to see them fall apart. Because what it is, it's like you got some aging guys like there in Akeem Hicks and Robert Quinn. But then you got some good guys, young guys like Rokon Smith and Jalen Johnson. So there's some promising things. There's some aging veterans. You wonder if their talent's starting to diminish at all. And then you got some young guys and some questionable guys if they're even the starters of the future. So, I mean, it can definitely be a top 15 defensive unit, but I do wonder if the areas where they lack depth is going to show up throughout the season, which will lead to inconsistencies by this Bears defense. But yeah, overall though, really quick before I do my overall feeling, they've got the Rams week 1. Maybe I could see it because you got your worries about the Rams offensive line, but I would definitely avoid the Bears defense because the Rams have a potential potent offense this year, and I think I would look for other matchups that I can stream during week 1. Overall, though, for the Chicago team, I think they're just more of a. It's like, yeah, you could see where they can put together a winning season if Justin Fields gets the week 1 start and he has like an offensive rookie year performance, and then that defense can stay healthy where they don't have to depend on the weak depth that they have in multiple areas of that unit. Yeah, I could see this team working their way to like a 9-8 record, 10-7 record with Justin Fields and cracking in as a wild card. But even if Justin Fields gets to start, I kind of lean towards this is going to be a year where even if he performs very well, I think this team the offensive line is going to be a problem for this year, where it's going to lead to inconsistent days by the rushing attack. It's going to maybe put too much pressure on Justin Fields, where he's going to have his lapses as a rookie and put the defense in bad situations. And then I just think that defense it's got some holes there where I think teams are going to be able to pick them apart in the air with a proper passing attack plan. And they're just not going to be the defense of old. I view them more of like they're gonna finish below 500. I think they're more like it's either gonna be like an 8-9, 9-8 type of year. Maybe it's more of like a 7-10, 6-11 type of year for the Bears. I just don't think they have enough to compete with the Packers to win the division. And then I just think they're gonna struggle to crack in as a wild card team. But I could be, like I said, I could be proven wrong. Justin Fields can come out, and I have high expectations for Justin Fields to be a great pro. And if he can immediately transfer over and not make as many mental lapses, mistakes that a rookie would make, and he can have an offensive rookie of the year, yeah, I could see them finishing 9-8, cracking in as a wild card team. They are definitely a middle of the pack team to me. They're not really sucky and they're not really good. They're just right there in the middle, and they need to address some areas on this roster before next year. But yeah, that's my preview video on the Chicago Bears. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in to this preview video. The next team I will be doing is the Indianapolis Colts. I will be doing that tomorrow for you guys. And then if you like this video, of course, as always, please like the video. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers before that Bucks and Cowboys game kicks off the season. Tell a friend to check me out, and then if you have not, go check out all the other team preview videos I've done. This is team number 20, so I got 12 more to do. So I'm going to keep on knocking these out for you guys. Peace out.